Hello and welcome back to Growler Model Painting. This is episode number 4 in our new video series, Become a Better Hobbyist. And this video is about painting technique, so the basics of painting for your models. I'm going to cover base coating, layering, washing, highlighting and dry brushing. So they're the cornerstones of the painting techniques. I'm going to go through each one in detail, talk about the best paints to use, best brushes to use, and just the best way to get a good effect on the model. Okay, so I'm going to carry on with this base coat, which I started in the last episode. If you haven't seen that, just go back. It talks about thinning paints. So I'm using the same mixture from the previous episode just to finish this base coat. And it's just his head that needs doing. So the best way to base coat a model is to use, I like to use a medium sized brush. I know a lot of people use a very large brush and they just paint the whole model in one colour, but you can sometimes get brush strokes by using this technique. It's a lot quicker, but you get brush strokes. But by using a smaller brush like this is a base coating brush, you can get a really nice finish across all the model. It takes a bit longer, but you can get a really nice effect like this. The idea of getting a good base coat is just to get an opaque colour across the whole model to act as a foundation for the rest of your paints. So as Combs-Erg, as I usually a bright red, I'm just going to go with a red that I have. It doesn't really matter what colour your base coat is, as long as it's along the lines of what colour you want the model to be. An important tip to mention when you're base coating your models is when you're thinning your paint down, 2 thin coats is better than 1 thick one. It takes a bit longer, but it means you're not going to lose any detail. See, if I was using a thick base coat, I could lose bits of detail like here, but it's not going to be the case because I'm going to use 2 thin ones. Alright, so now the model's fully base coated, we're going to focus on how to use washers effectively. So there's many different types of washers. I'm going to show you one of the Citadel washers, Devil and Mud. Devil and Mud goes very well with red, slightly better than black, complements the colour a bit better. So there is a lot of different washers, and you can actually make your own washers, which we'll show you in future videos. But I'm just going to use one of these Citadel ones. It's from the older range, but it's still very effective. All washers work in roughly the same way, that give slightly different effects. So what I'll show you here can be used with any wash. So the best brush to use is a one like this, where the body of the brush is slightly fatter than the tip. This means it can hold more liquid in the body, which is what you want when you're using a wash brush. So best way to do it is to take quite a lot of the wash on your brush. So you're loading it up, you're getting plenty of it on the brush there, as you can see. And then we can just start applying it to the model. Now this is really simple, you don't have to be careful at all. The main thing you want to focus on is getting the wash in the recesses. So don't be scared to keep going back and getting more and more wash, because it doesn't really matter how much you put on, because we will be layering paint over the top of this in the next step. So the idea is to get in all the recesses and just cover all the area so it maintains one even colour across the model. As for wash brushes, I would recommend watercolour brushes, because watercolour brushes hold the most paint, they hold the most liquid. So it's really effective to use watercolour brushes when using washers. Some of the best watercolour brushes are the Winsor & Newton Kolinsky range. Really nice brushes. I went through them on the first video of the series, I think. Another nice brush to use is the Da Vinci range of the Winsor & Newtons. They're also a nice watercolour brush. So I think we're finished washing this model. As you can see, it came out quite uniform and it's all in the recesses. Okay, so now that the wash is dry, we're going to move on to the next technique, and it's layering. So the idea of layering is to pick out the higher areas with your mid colour. So this is going to be red, obviously, so I'm going to pick a medium red colour, not too bright, and I'm going to layer over the highest areas, avoiding the recesses. So the best kind of brushes to use when you're layering are, again, quite a nice thick body watercolour brushes, so you can get a lot of liquid in there. And when you water your paint down, we don't want the paint to be too thin so it runs back into the recesses, but we don't want it too thick that we'll lose any detail. So you want a nice medium level of thickness. So I'll just mix that paint up now and we can get started with the layering. Okay, so I've mixed this paint up. It's a nice thickness and we're going to start layering. So as I said, we want a nice clean finish. We want to avoid those recesses. So I'm just going to pick out this area here. And usually when you're painting Warhammer and Fantasy especially, layering takes the longest. So this is the step you want to spend the longest amount of time doing. You want to be really careful with your paint placement and make sure you get the streaks out. So just going to show you a few examples. So we want to get a nice blend between the recesses and the higher points that we're layering here, and we also want to create contrast at the same time. So I'm working on the leg here. The idea is just I'm going to cover the whole leg, but I'm going to avoid this bottom area here, and we can get in there just to get that. So you can kind of see how layering works. You want to use your mid colour and you want to avoid them recesses. Okay, so now this step's finished. I've finished all the layering. As you can see, I've avoided most of the recesses the best I can. It's a lighter colour red that I've used, and this is going to be the medium tone for the model. So the next technique we're going to go through is highlighting. This is one of the harder techniques, and I'm going to mix up the paint and we'll get started with that now. Okay, so I've mixed up the next colour. It's slightly lighter. I've mixed a bit of orange into it, thinned it down a little bit to the right level, and we can get started. So best way to highlight is to use a bit of a thinner brush. I'm using a detail brush, but as long as your point is straight, you don't have to worry about what size brush you use, as long as you've got a fine point on it. And the idea is just to go around the edges of the armour areas and just any part that would catch the light. So around his face armour there, we can go on the top of his head here, because that would catch a bit of light. Because the idea is just to make it seem a bit more 3D. It's best not to water your paint down too much, because you don't want it to run into those recesses and that'll ruin the work we've already done. So not too thin. We also don't want to be too bright, so you see a lot of highlights that contrast the colour too much. So you might see a red model and with orange highlights. That's a bit too far. It's best to mix up your colours so they blend better, because if your highlight's too extreme on top of your previous colour, it will make the model look really cartoonish, and it won't look great. So we're just kind of highlighting all these little sections here. You can go as far as you want with this. Just going to try and pick out these backpack highlights. You can see there it goes quite nicely, this orangey colour with the previous colour. This step usually doesn't take too long, depends how thorough you are. Okay, so here's an example of some finished highlights. Just be really careful to get a nice blend between your medium colour and your highlight colour. So don't go too extreme. Try and match the colours as best you can. Okay, I'll also add, if you want to actually know how to paint a comb zerk, I will have a really nice video on the channel of how to paint it. So this video is just to show you the techniques you can use. I've just used this model. So the next technique we're going to start doing is dry brushing, but I'm going to use a different model and I'll show you how that's done. Okay, so the next technique we're going to look at is dry brushing. This is a really popular one among many painters. So I'm going to show you this technique. I'm going to use this large flat dry brush. It's nice and dry, and I'm going to use this metallic paint from Citadel, bulk and metal. It's an old one, but that's fine. This technique will work with any paint, but what I would say is don't thin the paint down. Dry brushing doesn't need that. You want it to be as dry and viscous as possible. I'm going to just dry brush this ultramarine here, or space marine. It's just an old model, so I'm just going to dry brush the back and show you the effect it gives. So when you dry brush, it's best to just take a little bit of paint onto the brush, so about that much there, and then I like to take a piece of kitchen roll or a tile, and you want to just remove most of that paint. So now most of that's off, you can start dry brushing. So the idea is just quick movements over the model, just to allow the paint to brush over the details, and it should usually miss the recesses. So I need a bit more paint on the brush there, and I'll just add a bit more. And as you can see there, when you dry brush, it tends to pick up all of the highest areas and the sharp edges, and it's a really quick technique. It's a really easy one. It works especially well when you're painting metal, so that's why I showed you with the metallic paint here. So just to recap, on a nice dry brush, most of the paint removed from the brush, and just quick motion like this over the model, and you'll get an even finish across the whole thing. Okay, so that's a close-up example of what the dry brush looks like, the kind of effect you can get with it. Not the greatest, but one of the quickest, so very easy to get good clean finish on it. Okay, just to sum up the video, this was covering all the basic techniques of painting, the ones that are most generally used across the board. However, we will be going into some really advanced techniques later in the series. We'll be doing loads of videos on wet blending, things like that. So we've got them to look forward to. And I would like to mention that this Saturday, everyone will know the launch of the new 40k rulebook. That's this Saturday, so we will be uploading a video showing the new rulebook and talking about what we think of it and changes in the rules, things like that, and that'll be up about midday Saturday. That's Greenwich Mean Time, so not sure when that is for Americans, but midday Saturday we're going to be doing that book review kind of thing. And I would like to do a little shout out for a channel that we've recently featured on our channel. It's called the Nitro Craft. What it is, it's for anyone who's into gaming, especially Minecraft, which I know a lot of people do like. It's a gaming channel that covers, they've got a Minecraft series going. It's very good. We've been watching the videos, really into them. So if there's anyone that likes gaming, anything to do with gameplays, series, should go and check that channel out. It's really excellent. It's featured on our channel, and we'll put a link in the description to their channel, so should really check that out. So subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for our next episode in the series, which is how to use green stuff. We're covering a range of different ways to use green stuff, and more importantly how to use it for beginners. So subscribe for that, and once again thanks for watching.